Understanding Cycles, Freedom, and Passover. This is a jam-packed episode. This is George Whitten, the founder and director of Worthy News. Sign up for our Worthy Briefs. We send out Monday through Friday. We have journalists all over the world. We just simply want to report the truth so that you as watchmen can be informed. Be sure to sign up for our Telegram channel. We are constantly updating it. That's kind of like our live blog. So let's get right into it. Before I start, I just want you to understand that I'm going to talk about prophecy, but I'm not a doom and gloomer. It is not the end of the world. It says this in 1 Corinthians 14. He that prophesies, who interprets the divine will and purposes, inspired preaching and teaching, speaks to men for their building and constructive spiritual progress, encouragement, and consolation. So I'm here to encourage you, but there's a lot of things going on. We just had the eclipse that took place, and a lot of people said, well, nothing happened. Actually, there's so much happening. It's unbelievable. The problem is when people go ahead and look at events, they're trying to speak into their perceived conception of what's going to take place, instead of actually just looking at the event as it is and seeing what's going to take place that transpires because of it. Now, when the eclipse happened in 2017, it went across 7 Salems. That happened in July. Donald Trump announced Jerusalem as the capital of Israel in December. So that was 5 months after. So listen, there's a lot of things happening. I want to kind of focus in on things. Now, right now, today is the 10th of Nisan. It is a very critical day. It's a day when people pick their Passover lambs. Now, there was a thing that went all over social media, and the statement was, it was actually a picture of a permit, and this is what the document said. This is the official document submitted to the Israeli police to allow the introduction of an altar and knives to slaughter red cows. This is completely false. This is not what this says. This is actually a group called the Return to the Temple. It is not the Institute. It's not the Temple Institute. And this is just a request for a Passover lamb on the Temple Mount. And it's a reenactment of the Passover for educational purposes. For those that don't understand, in 2017, after Donald Trump announced Jerusalem as the capital, they started beginning to do a sacrifice, a reenactment of the Passover lamb sacrifice. This is in 2018, the very first Passover after Donald Trump's announced Jerusalem, and there's live streaming that happens every year on this event. And today is the 10th of Nisan. What's today? Well, today is not only when they pick the Passover lambs, it's the understanding that this is actually the day that Yeshua, that Jesus walked into Jerusalem. It happened early this morning. Why? Well, God works on his prophetic calendar. The day that you pick your Passover lamb, the Jewish people were yelling, screaming, "Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord." And what did he do that day? Well, from the 10th to the 14th, the Jewish people are cleaning their houses. They're looking for all the leaven. What did the Lord do when he came into the temple? He drove out the money changers. He overturned the tables. He cleaned his father's house. The next thing you do is you inspect your lamb. You have to inspect your lamb. And what were the Sadducees, the Pharisees doing? They were inspecting Yeshua. When did he die? Well, it was Wednesday evening when they had their Passover meal. And then going into the 14th is when he died. Now, why do I say Thursday afternoon? Well, because, listen, if you understand that God works on a perfect cycle, it says in John it was the great Shabbat, meaning it was a great day, but it wasn't Shabbat. When it says the great Shabbat, it means it's a day that's considered to be a Shabbat. You can't work. Well, that's the 14th of Nisan. And because they couldn't work, it couldn't be Wednesday night. Why? Because if it wasn't a great Shabbat, then the mother, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the other Marys could have gone to the tomb before Shabbat on Friday, but they couldn't go until Sunday. So it couldn't be Wednesday night. And if it was Wednesday night, it would be 3 full days and 3 full nights. That means we would have risen on the 4th day, not on the 3rd day. So that's why it's a partial 3 days and 3 nights. But it's 3 days and 3 nights, make no mistake about it. And he rose again. And we just celebrated the resurrection day around the world. But hey, for us, for practical purposes, today is the 10th of Nisan. There's a lot of things happening. So I want to kind of go into what happened this week. Obviously, we had an attack upon Israel, the Iranians, but it wasn't just the Iranians. Because we find out later that that the militia groups in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Yemen, all attacked. There was 500 aerial assaults between ballistic missiles, between drones, between supersonic missiles, and Israel shot down 99% of them. Now, while Israel will claim all this great, this great feat that it was the drones and their defense system shut down, what I'm going to submit to you today is the fact that at that time you had millions of believers around the world praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And there was a supernatural hand of God on this whole endeavor. And for those that don't think that God's hand is on this nation, just look at a map. It said, look, if you can look at a map and Israel's there, that means God has his hand on it. God doesn't allow anything to happen without taking place. So understand that we have a calling to provoke the Jewish people to jealousy as a Gentile, and we're called to pray for their salvation. So it was a miracle that took place. We went ahead and posted up this video right immediately as the event was taking place. That's why you need to get on our Telegram channel. It was an amazing feat that day. Well, last week, you had Donald Trump literally go ahead and talk
what's going on with Israel, October 7th, and what's going on with Israel could end up in a world war. We have a president that can't put two sentences together. We have a president that can't find the stairs off a stage.
I'm going to cut him off there because he starts using language I wouldn't use. But Donald Trump say, hey, look, we have a very, this could be the event of the Third World War. Now, Biden just announced, and it was a crazy quote, but this is what he just said.
And I made it clear to Israelis, don't move on Haifa. It's just not,
Don't move on Haifa. Haifa is in Israel. I'm sure what he meant to say was Hezbollah. But, what we have to understand is that he's only proven the points of Donald Trump true. And it is a very crazy time right now. Tomorrow, the United States, if they do not veto a UN resolution, we could have, quote unquote, a Palestinian state tomorrow. That's what they're voting on today. Or voting on tomorrow. There's a lot of events happening. But I want to really focus on a couple other things. There are situations happening in Iran that Israel has to be very careful and understand that it could actually help facilitate the end of the mullah regime in Iran. This was today or yesterday during a great march of the triumph of how the Iranians, struck Israel. They went ahead and claimed victory. And basically, Israel said, we shot down 99%, but, they had to save face. But this was in a protest. Now, mind you, this is right in front of the mullahs, and someone turns on a water gun as they go across. The situation is ripe for the takedown of the regime. I believe this is the prophetic nature of the things happening in prophecy. I think that if you haven't seen a video I've done, I'll put it into the links, but really God's plan for the restoration of Iran. And God has a plan to restore them, but it's not without a war. And so I really encourage you to watch that video. I'll post the link in the YouTube section. But there's a lot more to cover. It's been a crazy time for us since we've been back in Baltimore. My parents live in Baltimore. We came up, and the day that we came up was the day that the Francis Scott Key Bridge got hit. The day that we were going to Jonathan Cahn's to speak and administer was the day of the earthquake. Now, I have to kind of take it from a devil's advocate point of view. There's so many things that I think this earthquake was God announcing, not just to Lebanon, not announcing just to. He was literally shaking the entire everyone that's involved right now. He said, "Hey, I'm shaking you," and this is what I mean. The earthquake happened near Lebanon, New Jersey, the same time that Nasrallah was giving his speech on what was called Al-Quds Day or Jerusalem Day. This is the day the Iranians, look at as the restoration of Jerusalem, and we need to eradicate the infidels. And that, what I mean by that is they think that they need to eradicate the Jewish people from the land, which will not take place. But what happens is there's an earthquake. Can you imagine what the Muslims must be thinking? Oh, God is for us. I mean, it's like, wow. But we look at this and we say, wow, an earthquake happening at the same time the speech was taking place. And at the same time, it happened near a place near a town called Whitehouse Station. So he's sending a warning to the White House. It happened near Bedminster, New Jersey, where Donald Trump has a golf course. He's sending a message to Donald Trump. Listen, God is trying to tell people, I am in control. And so, we have to understand that we're just pilgrims here on this earth, watching, being watchmen, sounding the trumpet, sounding the alarm. And so I'm going to sound the alarm to help you understand what's taking place. This right now is what I call the cycles of war and transition. It begins with the Ides of March, which is the 15th. This is the day Julius Caesar was stabbed by Brutus and the senators. But this marks really when the birth of Rome took place. See, while everyone focuses on the Ides of March, they don't realize this is actually the anniversary, that the day that happened was in the same week that Rome was founded. It was the time when Napoleon was birthed. It was the time when Hitler was birthed. It's the time when the Ali Khamenei in Iran, that's calling for death to Israel, was birthed. Now, going along with this has a lot of cycles within the United States. I mean, we had the Revolutionary War at this time. We had the Civil War. We had the Mexican-American War. We had the Spanish-American War at this time. We also had a lot of other major events happen. We had the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. This is the week that Titanic sunk. This is the week that America abandoned the gold standard. The Waken Davidio debacle, which led to Oklahoma City bombing. This is the time that the Columbine shooting took place. The Virginia Tech shooting. This is the Boston Marathon bombing. This is when the Gulf oil spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico. This is a season to be praying and to be watching. And if you don't understand what happened, what I believe happened when the Francis Scott Key Bridge got hit, I did a video on this, but just a recap. Here is God sending a message. I'm focused on what God is allowing us to understand, that God allowed this to take place. And now the FBI has opened up an investigation, but now we're seeing other ships losing power, and we're seeing other things happen. There's something happening. I believe there's a systematic attack right now in our electrical infrastructure. I don't know exactly what's going on, but God is allowing our defenses to come down. Now, when this took place, this was at Francis Scott Key. This is, if you haven't seen the episode I did on this, I did it much more in depth, but I want you to understand that this area, Baltimore, this is where I'm from, Pratt Street, which is right in the Inner Harbor, right up the street from the two stadiums where they play baseball and football. This is where the first bloodshed took place of the Civil War. This is the area when they declared martial law. They declared martial law all over Federal Hill. And not only did they do that, they went ahead and started imprisoning people. They went ahead and suspended the writ of habeas corpus. The Supreme Court overturned the Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln didn't care. They went ahead and arrested the grandson of Francis Scott Key, Frank K. Howard, and they shut down. All 9 newspapers were shut down in Maryland, so there was no freedom of speech. And they were imprisoned. All these editors and all these journalists were imprisoned without any charges. And at the same time, they were going through it. They were arresting people in the Congressional Assembly of Maryland. So here is, I think, a warning shot, because what happened last night was there was 911 outages all over the United States in 9 different states. We posted this on Telegram immediately as a prayer point. Why? Because look, these are the things that we need to pray into that are happening. This is happening yesterday. Last night was when this is going off. This is the beginning, April 17th, going in April 18th. Today is the 18th. Now, a lot of things have been happening this week about us losing sovereignty. This was an article we just published today talking about the U.S. trying to help dozens of nations try to prevent pandemics. So they're going ahead and they're funding, a lot of this stuff. But we just announced how the WHO, they're pushing for this pandemic treaty. You really have to understand how the sovereignty of the U.S. is being threatened, and how the threatening of freedom across all over the globe could be taking place at the end of May. Now, we've had an attack this week. We've had an attack on the attack of the freedom of speech in the press. We've had an attack on the right to bear arms, and we've had an attack on the unreasonable right of search and seizure. We've had an attack on 3 of the first, the Bill of Rights, the 3 amendments, these 3 amendments, and I'll explain what I mean. Catherine Herridge, who is a journalist, a former Fox News journalist, and now, or former also CBS journalist, she had all of her files confiscated. She was fired from CBS. What was she fired for? She wouldn't reveal the names of of the whistleblower that whistleblowed a Chinese national that was espionaging in the U.S. And so now she would not reveal the unnamed sources upon this Chinese American scientist. This is crazy. And she goes ahead and has to go before the Congress last week and literally talk about how her whole life in her house and her family are being threatened. Her whole life, because she will not reveal the source. If we don't have freedom of speech and freedom of the press, there is no America. At the same time this is happening, just on April 11th, the Biden administration instituted another law. And there was gun groups going ahead and slamming this, talking about, hey, this is an attack on the right to bear arms. At the same time, I follow a lot of different people on Telegram and on Twitter. And this particular lady is the National Security Programs and Director of the Brennan Center for Justice. So now this is a liberal think tank. This is not a conservative think tank. But she's a progressive thinker, and she went ahead and talked about the 702 FISA bill that is being pushed. The vote is scheduled. It expires on April 19th, tomorrow. The Senate's getting ready to take this up. And I believe it's going to go ahead and try to be passed through on a Friday afternoon while everyone's not paying attention. This is what tends to happen. They pass these things and no one pays attention. And this is actually opening up the door. This is what she explained. This new power works under current law. The government can't compel electronic communication service providers that have direct access to communications to assist an NSA in conducting 702 surveillance. But in practice, that means companies like Verizon and Google must turn over the communications of the targets of Section 702 surveillance. What we're talking about is maybe another sacrifice of freedom, to the unlawful seizure of American rights. Now, I had a lot of people ask me about this Tucker Carlson interview. Listen, the person that he interviewed, this particular pastor, is steeped in a theology that doesn't understand Israel's prophetic role today and Israel's coming into the kingdom in the future. And what this interview did not talk about in any way, shape, or form is the reason why you don't have freedom in the Gaza territories has nothing to do with Israel. Has nothing to do. Because when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, the very first thing they did was they hunted missionaries in Gaza. Now, we've been doing Worthy News since 1999. We've been doing it for 25 years. And we've been covering the persecution. But immediately after that, in October of that year, there was a Bible Society bookstore. Its manager was assassinated. The Bible Society was shut down. You cannot buy a Bible in Gaza. That has nothing to do with Israel. It has to do with Hamas, a terrorist organization. So what the interview did not demonstrate is that in Israel, yes, you have complete freedom to go ahead and, there's churches all over Israel that are run by believers. And any Arab Christian will tell you they would rather live under Israeli law than under the Palestinian and under Palestinian jurisdiction. So the interview was really biased. It was anti-Semitic. And sadly, hopefully Tucker Carlson will go ahead and interview someone that actually lives in Israel. I've been in Israel for over 20 years. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. I had protests outside my house many, many times. It's okay. Listen, the reality is if you weren't doing great things for the kingdom, you wouldn't be being attacked all the time. And I understand that the people that protest against me, it's not the Israeli government. There is a faction of Jewish people in the land that are very much underneath a cult-like mentality. And what I mean by that is in the town I live in Arad, it's 110, 120 degrees sometimes in the summer. And there's still people that are dressed in long garb with furry hats. It's 120 degrees. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I recognize that God has got a plan to restore them to the kingdom. That God's going to reveal himself to them. So we go ahead and we just continue to provoke them to jealousy. We continue to love on those that hate us. That's what we're called to do as believers, to love our enemies, to do good to those that despitefully hate us. And as we do good, what are we doing? We're heaping coals upon their head. And we're showing them the goodness and the grace of God is bigger. And while a lot of these people that go ahead and they watch these videos, they're almost incited to anger and to hate. That is not of God. That is not even close to God. The reality is that we're supposed to get closer, especially this week. We're going into Pesach. We're going into Passover. And a lot of people say, well, no, that's a feast that we shouldn't even touch. Listen, Paul goes ahead and says, let no one pass judgment on you, whether in questions of food and drink or in regard to festival, new moon, or Sabbath. So, hey, look, he says, look, don't let anyone. And so people will claim this verse, say, hey, we shouldn't touch those things. Look what Paul says here. He says, these are a shadow of things to come, meaning they're coming back. And if you understand the millennial reign and you understand the things that are coming, all of these things are coming back. Why? Because the festivals and Shabbat and all these things are focused on the Messiah. And the idea is for this week is to get closer to the one that died for you, to understand Passover. Look what Paul says. He says, look, Christ, for the Messiah is our Passover lamb that has been sacrificed. Let us celebrate. Did he say, let's think about the festival? He said, no, celebrate it. So look, I'm encouraging you, go find a Passover Seder. Go and celebrate the feast. Don't look at it as a law. We're not under the law. We're celebrating the fact that Yeshua came. He's our Passover lamb, that he died for us, that he shed his blood for us, that he's risen from the dead. This is the week that we're celebrating all of these things. And the irony is that this is happening at a week when the world could be in complete chaos and a complete shaking. But we as believers, we have to recognize that the only true peace is in the center of the hurricane. It's in the eye of the storm. It's in the center of his will. And while we see everything go crazy around us, and that we should be at perfect peace at this time, we should understand that God's got a plan and that you are part of his plan. Be activated, understand the events are happening, pray into these events. And until next time, this is George Whitten reporting with Worthy News.